marched you to your squad bay, or to where your DIs were.
Yeah, that's on.
Bro, I'll never forget that. And it was funny. So I went to boot camp. I was 23. I'm like an old man going to boot camp.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't the only old man. There was another guy who was in my platoon in boot camp that was a Navy corpsman. And he had actually served in the original Gulf War. So I joined in '96. So he had a couple years on me. And I'll never forget that. Like, they marched us after like 4 days with this receiving platoon, and you getting all your gear together. And they march you to where your new barracks are going to be. And these drill instructors come walking out. And I'm telling you, man, they look like a pack of hungry, rabid wolves. And they're just standing there just looking at you. You can almost see them licking their chops. And then, you know, the staff NCOs do their little thing, salute, turn the platoon over. And he just turns around and gives his DIs a freaking thing. And they are on you. Yeah. And you're just like...
do y'all call it anything in the Marine Corps? We call it shark attack. So
I don't remember.
That was always the term that went around. Was like that was your shark attack. Like the handover.
Yeah,
right?
Handover.
And it's funny you say that because I remember leaving the reception battalion, and we're riding a cattle car to our barracks. Mm-hmm. And I remember this guy, and I can still think of his last name. We're riding. It's completely silent, and he's like, "Guys, privates, listen up. Cut out all the worry. Like, this is a different time. Right? It's not.
He's just feeding that
to you. It's not like it used to be. Whatever. Like, cut out all the BS. You're gonna be fine." And I'm sitting there thinking, my 17-year-old naive, mind. I'm like, thank God. Like, man, that sounds so much better than I've been led to believe. And of course, within 45 seconds, he's like, "Psych!" And then obviously, we go from there. But, that was, it's funny to think that was like a defining moment of like, oh, the world is not what you think it is, but you are about to find out.
So one of the funniest things they did in boot camp, and I don't want to stay on your military story. I really want to transition, but I love this story. I mean, it's kind of, some people may not think it's funny. I think it's funny. And I got told I got told before I went to boot camp because I was older and I was already hanging. I was hanging out and drinking beer with some of the guys that were recruiting me because, like I said, I was 23. I turned 24 in boot camp.
Yeah.
And there was this time where we're learning about Marine Corps history, and so we're on this huge auditorium. I mean, there's the whole battalion's in there, so or at least 3 platoons of us in there. So there's 180 guys in this room, maybe.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you see one of the guys come running down the pass, one of the walkways from where we're sitting at in this auditorium. And it's inside. And he goes up and starts talking to the guy up on the stage. And you're like, "All right, close your green monster, put your head down, we'll be back." And you're like, "All right, cool, whatever. Close your book, put your head down. All right, eyes click, everybody's eyeballs up there. Get your book out, get a piece of paper. We'll start at the top. Last name first name last, date of birth, social security number. This is your last will and testament. Everybody, war just broke out in Korea. Boot camp's been short to 12 weeks. Everybody's shipping out." Literally a dozen, maybe more guys just started crying. I'm laughing. I'm trying not to laugh. Excuse me, I'm not laughing. I did not lose my bear. And then some guy gives it a second. He goes, "This is what happened in 1952 whenever the Korean War broke out." And it was just like, oh my God. But it was the funniest thing. Man, they had so many games. But, so 11 years in the military, in the Army. Mm-hmm. What made you get out? I mean, you're kind of at that halfway point. Hey, I'm closer to 20 than I am to...
That's the golden question. Anytime I tell somebody that is prior service, they're like, "Man, I didn't really have."
Well, I mean,
I got to
10's that number.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
Like that's when it's either get off the pot or commit.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what it was. I knew that I didn't want to spend the next decade plus doing what I was doing, and then be getting out and trying to figure out, man, where I want to be. I knew that I was gonna have to move. Mm-hmm. I did not want to do that. I didn't want to do that to my wife, or we only had one baby at the time. And I just knew like, hey, I've done this. Mm-hmm. Nobody's handing out any awards for staying longer than you wanted to, right? Now you might get the retirement at the end, but you lost at that point. I would have lost 10 years of my life if I didn't want to be there. And so I resigned my full-time slot. Went, basically just did an administrative transfer to the IRR. I had 4 more years on my contract. Mm-hmm. So technically, for the next 4 years, I'm sitting there waiting, thinking like, man, I hope nothing pops off crazy, because at that point, I would have been, I'm an E6 who hasn't deployed since 2010. Mm-hmm. If they need guys, I'm your guy, right? And so, I resigned, transferred over, and never looked back. You know what I mean? I had some great friends, and you kind of realize too in that position, the people that you want to stay in touch with, mm-hmm. or the people that you think you're going to miss, you'll stay in touch with. Yeah. And everybody else, and they're just living their life too. Mm-hmm. And nobody's going to not transfer or not get out because I'm there, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. And so, you realize you just have to kind of do what's best for you and your family. And like I said, the people that have stayed in my life were exactly the ones I expected. And there's a lot of guys that, it's not like I hold it over. I'm like, if I'm not reaching out to you and you're not reaching out to me, it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, you're living your life and I'm living mine, and you just kind of hope the best for everybody and continue on.
Yeah, man, I gotta be honest. I mean, I've been out for 24 years now. I got out in 2000. And there's probably 1 or 2 guys that I still even have contact with. And like one of them is about twice a year.
Sure.
I mean, he was a good friend. He's probably one of my closest friends. Like, we did everything together when we were serving together. We were stationed together. We were in the same barracks. I mean, everything. Like, Friday, Saturday night, we were together doing something probably up to no good, but never getting in trouble, not hurting anybody. But and even now, like I said, I'll call him on the Marine Corps birthday. Hey, Superfly, you old devil dog, you old blah 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 blah, whatever. Shoot him a text, but that's about the extent of it. Yeah. And just went on with my life.
Dude,
but loved them, loved them all, loved every minute of it.
If you were supposed to spend every day with them, you would have married them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I think the Marine Corps allows.
Yeah, it's not a big thing.
I don't know. Anyway, so what'd you do once you got out?
I went straight into a sales role in the insurance world. It's this super, I guess you call it, niche product, basically, where I sold life insurance that was built around the same concept as SGLI. So the same thing that you carry in the military. And it was built specifically for first responders. So police, fire, EMS, and corrections. And so I traveled every single week from, my house in Auburn, Alabama to southern Mississippi, and then the next year to North Georgia. Every single week, different city, different agencies. And, it was basically my role in the agency to brief all of their personnel, sit down with them one-on-one, mm-hmm. and go over these, go over the options of coverage and that kind of thing. We also provided a no-cost benefit to them. So mm-hmm. just for being a sworn officer or just for being employed there, every single one of them had a no-cost benefit provided through the Armed Forces Benefit Association. And so, we kind of administered that alongside of, that sales process. And, it was a super cool environment, especially coming out of the military and being, I kind of think a lot of times those two worlds kind of overlap.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, what was the big correlation?
Yeah.
Because, I know you were an MP in the military, and you were in charge of this training regiment, but
and so
even still, it's
we're not, we weren't going in there in suit and tie, right? Yeah. And obviously once I left the military, grew my beard as fast as I could, and you know, and we just kind of kept it really casual and not necessarily played the part, but you know, for me it was always like I'm going to go in a pair of, you know, kind of tactical pants and a polo and not and just be there to serve them and not be there to slick anybody and, you know, do that. And man, that led to, you know, thousands of conversations, 1,200 policies, which is in the insurance world is a wild amount of volume for that kind of time period. And, you know, it was a super cool thing, but the reality is when you are married and have a baby at home, leaving every single week, and I mean, honestly, making way more money than I could have ever imagined in the military is only cool for so long until your wife's like, hey, we really like you being here. You know what I mean? And so that kind of starts to weigh on you, you know, and you start to realize like, hey, what's the long-term play here? But we were kind of set on the idea that, hey, we're going to continue on this path for the next several years and we'll see how it plays out. And as early 2020 came along, as soon as government shutdowns started within those buildings, I mean, you're talking about every single one of them is a city government building. Yeah. There is absolutely no access. There is no outsiders coming in. No, you know, nothing like that. It was like overnight, that business evaporated. Yeah. And you know, we kind of sat there for a little while, thinking like, we're gonna wait and see how this kind of plays out. Did that for 4 to 6 months, and then it was like, all right, maybe this isn't gonna come back. And now we kind of got to figure out, where do we go from here? Because I left the military, went in, had this great run, and then overnight it kind of vanished. Yeah. So, you know, that was a weird transition piece. But we added another baby. Yeah. You know, I mean, a lot of cool things happened in that, you know, transition.
That's about when I think I ran into you in not Morris Mill, Grove Hill. Yeah. It's 2020. I mean, dude, I remember seeing you, you know, running and doing stuff, and yeah. I remember chatting with you, and I think that was about when you started the whole deadbeat dad thing.
Yeah, that was
something. So I remember you telling me something happened in that. Like there was something that happened there, and I just don't remember what it was.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the concept of the Deadbeat Dad Project originally, long story short is, I was in a comment section on somebody else's content they were talking about.
Never a good thing, just by the way.
Yeah, no, it seemed.
You hear that? Stay out of the algorithm. Stay out of the freaking algorithm.
It seemed really harmless, but you know, it was a mom saying that she was out, you know, working out or something, doing something, and I said something to the effect of like, man, I totally agree. You know, getting my workout in is like, it's got to happen. It's the best part for me, like mentally, physically, like that time's got to happen. So I was making a priority, something along those lines. Yeah. And you know, and somebody commented was like, must be nice to just abandon your wife and kids to go to the gym every day and hang out by yourself. Right?
I remember you telling me that exact story.
I'm like, oh, and I commented back, you know, like, oh man, I'm such a deadbeat. Like, I can't imagine going to the gym and, you know, abandoning my family. And so I kind of took it and ran with it. And
well, you should have.
And said, hey, you know, if this is what being a deadbeat is, then I'm going to be a deadbeat.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, and that was, like I said, that was a time in life where I felt like most areas of my life were firing off cylinders, kind of going well. But I still hadn't figured out, man, I'm in this sales world. I'm operating at a super high tempo. Like I really like this intensity. Yeah. And when that all kind of fell apart, I didn't have anything to continue that into. And that was ultimately
Maybe
my
mission.
that's like my downfall that I can look back and see is like, dude, I had all of the parts, I had all of the attributes, the qualities. I had nothing to pour it into, which I think is so many men, so many people. But man, you know, when you're used to being a leader, you're used to being a go-getter and getting things done and accomplishing a mission, and you suddenly have no mission. You can use all of those good things and turn it really bad.
Yeah.
Because now you're bored. And I got to a point where I was bored. And so the what started as like, oh, I'm gonna take this and run with it, Deadbeat Dad project. Instead, I went the opposite direction and I was like, I am missionless. I don't have anything that I need to, you know, there's no mountains to climb right now. And I got bored. I was still a super involved dad, super involved husband. I think I looked like I was just like a really good guy, but I was bored. And for me, that was like, hey, instead of, I don't know if you're ready to go into this, but
Whatever you want, man. I don't care.
I thought the Deadbeat Dad thing was the coolest thing ever until I felt like I actually started to become one. You know what I mean? And of course, my definition of that has always been kind of different than other people, but I think it's absolutely possible to be an involved father and a good husband and, you know, physically fit and do all the things and still just not be that great of a guy.
Dude, if you're not present, you're not present.
Period. You know, and I think too that especially when you know my capacity is here, I'm operating here, this is not who I am. I'm way out of character, you know? And so I kind of just stopped the podcast like a few episodes in because, you know, and honestly at that point I'm like, I have no idea where to even go with this because I know that I'm not operating where I should be right now. Yeah, I'm crushing in the gym, but I'm drinking every single day because there's nothing else to do. Like I'm now at this point doing everything I can to basically salvage, you know, in the insurance world. I'm working from home, right? So I'm doing whatever I want to do from that, you know, from that standpoint, you know, and I really got in this super comfortable place where I'm like, hey, I'm crushing it. I'm still killing the workouts. I'm making money. I'm still a great dad, great husband. I'm gonna drink beer every day and have a great time. And then eventually, you know, that just continues and it continues and it continues. And now, you know, at this point, I'm not working out. I'm really hating the idea of just working from home and feeling like I have no mission, no direction, you know, whatever. And honestly, I feel like I just kind of pushed pause on everything and time just went by. And I can look back at that and think, man, what a bonehead move. And then you realize that's a lot of people. But they have jobs and other stuff. They've just pushed pause on all the other things that are actually important that they know that they should be attacking and doing something with. They have gifts and passions. They've just pushed pause. And so I just knew, man, and I had this conversation. I've heard this same concept from several, you know, people that I look up to that said, hey, like, God, if you'll take this off of me, if you'll help me get this out of my life, somehow, like, this will be what I do, you know, because I knew, dude, if I can stop drinking every day, like, dude, I can help a ton of people. Because I'm the guy. Like, I'm the guy that's like, you don't know what it's like? Yeah, I do. Right? And I just knew, like, in that, and I thought that for 2 years. I kept drinking every day. Like, it didn't stop. It was a process. You know what I mean? And so I went from, hey, Deadbeat Dad Project, this is cool, haha, to I am not living my potential at all.
Yeah.
I am, honestly, I feel like a pretty crappy person right now to over the course of 4 years now being on the other side of it and going, hey, you could have just kept on with the podcast and just been honest. And it would have sounded like, hey, the Deadbeat Dad Project is how to become a deadbeat.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers podcast. I'm your host, William Walker, and today we have my friend, Brian Carter. Brian is a husband, father of three, combat veteran, and local entrepreneur. Born and raised right here in Opelika, Alabama. After leaving the military in 2018, Brian has worked in multiple industries and served thousands of people in different businesses. Now he aims to serve those who, like him, find themselves wanting to take back control of their life and live out their calling. Brian started the Deadbeat Dad Project podcast this year to share his story and help others through sobriety, building a family, their faith, and living closer to the fire inside of them. And that's why Brian's here today, because after I had a chance to work out with him a couple days ago, I learned that we are both cut from the same cloth. How you doing today, Brian?
Rocking on, man. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm glad you're here. I'm hoping this is going to work. I hope we're going to get a good sounds. Here we go. Check this out. Pop my little Jocko go, just in case. Hey, you want a promo? Cheers, Jocko. But anyway, to really kind of get into this, man, the way my podcast works is I do a quick intro, just kind of tells everybody a little bit about you and who you are. But I like to get the backstory. I want people to know who you are. Like I told you the other day, the heart behind my podcast is that the regular everyday guy, the guy that I meet in a coffee shop on Monday mornings when I'm going to get a cup of coffee, or the guy I see at Byron's having breakfast with his kids, right? In a Bible study or just getting breakfast with his kids. And I want to tell that man's story and how they decided to live and lead their family differently. And I really believe that unless you get to know the guy from the very beginning and understand his story and lessons learned, why he made that decision, so it's key. So what I'd like to do is start at the beginning, man, kind of like, hey, where are you from, where you grew up, what it was like. Yeah, man. What was Brian like as a kid?
Dude, so it's September 19th, 1989. It's a Tuesday. It's late in the morning. No, but like I said, I was, born and raised right here, and my most all of my family is fairly close here. My dad's like, fifth generation from Sylacauga, so it's not like we're not too far spread out, but pretty typical upbringing. I did come. My parents were divorced when I was 2. Wasn't any kind of bad situation. Both my parents got remarried pretty early on, so like I grew up. My normal was I've got a dad and a stepmom. I've got a mom and a stepdad. I'd go 1 week here and 1 week there, and like that's what I did for the first 16 years, and which was pretty wild, right? I've got 3 other brothers. I've got a sister, so big family, and my childhood was just learning how to grow up and be one of the younger siblings. You know what I mean? And joined the military. I wouldn't say even out of high school. I was 17. When I enlisted, and kind of split my training up, around my junior and senior year. And then when I graduated, it was time to go finish it up and be, kind of, I guess, part of the operational,
good student
military. I was a really good student up until the point where I'd enlisted, and then I knew that was my go-to, that I wasn't going to go to college.
Yeah.
And and I definitely slacked off at that point because I was completely riding on the fact that after I left high school, I had somewhere to go.
Yeah.
Right. And I also knew statistically, I'm going overseas at some point soon. So don't get too tied down with college or trying to do anything like that. And that that's the first 18 years in 2 minutes, right?
Oh wow, man. So your parents are divorced. You grew up here in Opelika. You said you were good in school up till the point that you knew that, hey, I'm really not going to be going to college anytime soon. I'm just going to focus on military. This is my next step.
Yeah, I was a runner all through middle school and high school, and that
track.
That was everything for me as far as athletics went, and you kind of start to kind of build your identity around what you're good at, because it's kind of all you got. What I mean? And obviously that helped me big time going into the military and already having that as a skill set, that's, the running piece is what holds back a lot of people. So even though I was this like scrawny little, 140-pound kid, at least I could run, and so that made things a lot easier.
I was 140 pounds and I couldn't run. I sucked at running, but
I floated,
I couldn't float either, brother. I was 140 pounds. I was sinking to the bottom.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of it. And as wild as it is, I met my wife when I was 18, mutual friend's birthday dinner. She used to live in a different town, which is where my wife is from, and had invited some of her old friends to come to this dinner. I tag along and end up, within like 5 minutes of the dinner, sitting across the table from, who would become my wife. And it was like we hung out that day and we hung out the next day, and we're like, hey, you want to hang out forever,
That's cool.
And it was the coolest thing. It's like, we were kids. I still feel like we are, but like we've literally grown, we've grown up together, and, now have 3 kids, and, they think that we've got it all figured out, and we're just, we're still growing up. So it's been the coolest thing, man.
That's fun. That's exciting, man. So that's cool. So how old were you then? You said
I was 18.
18 when you met her, right?
Yeah.
And so you had, and this is
I hadn't even finished training yet, so I still left town a couple months later.
Yeah.
Went back to Missouri, finished up training, came back. That was the fall of 2008, where, we spent every waking moment together. In, 2009, 2010, I deployed.
Yeah. Okay.
Told her, I guess Halloween of 2009 was when I found out. I told her, I said, hey, look, I totally get it. Like, you don't have to, feel bad. Like, I get it if you don't want to stick around and it's going to be a long time. And, she cried and did the whole thing, and ultimately decided, like, hey, I'm not going anywhere. And that was like the coolest thing. It was the coolest experience. And yeah, I mean, she was actually a year behind me. So the first, she had just graduated really when I was getting ready to go overseas. So, I can't even imagine, like, that's probably going to be the crappiest Cinderella story, for a girl to,
find the love of life, or at least the love of life, and then realize, hey, he's going to war.
But I see it in a year,
So where'd you serve in Iraq or Afghanistan? Iraq, right?
Yeah, Mosul, Iraq. We were there for a year, stayed in the same spot, and came back June 2011. So that was really, that's, I guess, when I feel like our life kind of began, because at that point I knew at least for a few years I wasn't going to be going anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it was really the first time where I felt like I had some stability of, like, I'm not leaving, I don't have anything to prepare for, like, I can just kind of get on with it now,
Well, that's good, man. I mean, so what did you do when you what was your time in the military like? What was that like? I mean, for you, did you have a big military history in your family, or?
I had, I think my grandfather, he was in Korea. I never knew him. He died when my dad was really young. And, all of my uncles and, some of my mom's side were all prior service. But it wasn't anything like that for me. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go continue my, grandfather's legacy or anything like that. It was just, honestly, it was really kind of isolated to, I just felt like it gave me the best shot. I didn't feel like I was going to go, have some full ride to college or, anything like that. And paying for college, or not paying for college, but having the ability to go to school through that is a lot different than having to take out student loans and, try to go do all that. And so I knew if anything, it gave me the best chance if I decided to do that. And ultimately, ended up going obviously on the active duty side. Didn't go to college and couldn't be happier with the way that kind of played out. So
it's
Excuse me.
No, you're good, man. It's all that bubbly water. That Liquid Death. We'll give him a shout out. It's Liquid Death right there. Just in case you need to sponsor it right here.
That's life, man.
Deadbeat Dad. Trailblazers. Liquid Death. Jocko Go. We'll take it all day long.
Yes, sir.
And don't forget my black rifle. Those are my boys. I love my black rifle. So I mean, so was that a hard transition for you going into the military and boot camp and training? And you said you were in MP the other night, right? So what was that like for you? Was it a huge transition?
You know, honestly, I think being really young, you know, going in at 17, you know, it's definitely a different environment from, you know, hey, this month you're in high school and now you're in a different state with, you know, 120, 130 people that you didn't know yesterday. And, you know, there's all these dudes just screaming at you all the time. Yeah, it's different, right? But obviously too, you know, coming from, like I said, a running background and living in that world where I was used to having a coach, right? I'm used to having somebody that's pushing me, and doing some of these long, physical, I guess, events, if you will. I think that definitely helped from the mental side. It wasn't like a problem for me. I wasn't the kind of person that was like thinking about home every second of every day and just missing it all the time. I really just enjoyed being where I was. You know, I always enjoyed the training aspect of the military, and I enjoyed being in different places, meeting different people. I mean, you know, and you know, just as well, that's like, there's guys that I went to, you know, basic with, what is that, 17 years ago, that like I could still pick up the phone and call.
It's crazy.
You know what I mean?
I've been out of the Marine Corps for 24 years.
And but you know, it's like, and, you know, and I see them now, especially through social media, where it's like, I see their kids growing up, they see my kids growing up, you know, it's the coolest thing. But at that time, you know, you're all just a bunch of kids, you know, and you know, and in that environment too, 2007 kind of time frame, it's like, dude, you know, if you enlist into basically any job at that time, but definitely, you know, one of these 10 or 12, like, you know, statistically, dude, like within a year or two, you're going overseas, period. And so I think that probably changes the training environment where it's like, hey, you might want to enjoy this a little bit, take it seriously, learn some good stuff, because pretty soon it's all going to be real. You know what I mean? And I think that definitely takes the kid, the child part out. Yeah. And really quickly you kind of realize like it's kind of time to buckle down. All my buddies are back home, you know, just hanging out for the summer.
Hanging out with season.
And we're not, you know what I mean? And there's a reason. So, you know, it was definitely, but like I said, I always enjoyed it. That was a great time for me, you know, being a young guy and not really knowing who I wanted to be. You know, had some great leaders, some great mentors through that process, you know. So yeah, I mean,
let's talk about that, man. Let's talk about some of those leaders. I mean, that's part of your story. Those are the guys who kind of probably had some etching into where we're at even now, but yeah.
Yeah, you know, and for me, it was always like, I guess I was kind of gravitated to the guys that seemed like they really kept their cool, you know, and obviously, you know, from a training environment, you can't take that for what it is. That's on the surface, it's just screaming, it's just, you know, whatever. But once you get kind of I guess later on in the process of your career, you start to find out kind of who people are, right? You know, you can pick out the guys that just scream to just be heard, and you pick out the guys that, you know, really kind of walk the walk. You know what I mean? And you know, and the people that, especially in the military, I always gravitated to the people that didn't use their time, their rank, their age as a reason why they can't do hard things. You know what I mean? I think that's bad. That's a terrible thing in the civilian corporate world, just as bad as in the military or first responder world. Is I've achieved this, now I don't have to work as hard. You know what I mean? And we all, you know, a lot of people try to justify me and say like, oh, you don't know what the stress is like of upper management, or, you know, this higher ranking comes with so much more responsibility and this and that. And the reality is like, it should, and it should come with more work, because we all know there's more reward. You know what I mean? So, but talking about those leaders, the first like coolest guy that I could ever think of was my first sergeant in basic training. His first sergeant Colt. He had to be one of the oldest first sergeants still in the active Army. There's no possible way there were many people older than him at that rank. I want to say he was even in Vietnam, but he was the kind of guy that you could tell at whatever age that he obviously hadn't aged out yet. He was a fit dude. He was there. I mean, obviously in the training environment, and that day starts at 3:45. He's on the floor at 3:45. He must have slept there, right? And and it's like, man, that's
sometimes you wonder.
That's just cool. When I thinking about being a young kid and at that time thinking I'm gonna make a life out of this.
Yeah,
it's cool to see one of your first influences is a guy who's like, oh no, I'm gonna beat you here. I'm gonna go home after you, and I'm way older than you. I'm still gonna be fit. I'm still gonna do all the ruck marches and runs and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, that was the first guy that I ever saw that didn't use any of his privilege. And a first sergeant in the active Army has a lot of privilege.
Yeah,
he didn't use it. You know what I mean? And I always remember too, maybe one of the first weeks of training, that he left a note on the whiteboard that said, "First sergeant really likes the smell of pine sol." And so we just knew, man, as long as our barracks were clean and there was some fresh pine sol on the floor, like we knew it was going to be a good thing, if he came in.
That's good stuff.
But yeah, fantastic people to learn from like that.
It wasn't pine sol either. It was like the pine oil.
Yeah.
It was like this industrial.
It's the government version of lowest bidder.
Bro, I can remember someone using that on a Humvee and literally taking the paint off the Humvee.
Oh, absolutely.
I still got the smell. Like you said it, and I just closed my eyes and I'm like, I'm back in the freaking squad bay.
Yeah, and you got 120 kids sleeping in those fumes, But yeah, it's wild, man.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. So obviously you spent some time in the Army. How many years were you in the Army?
11 and a half.
11 and a half. So you deployed, came back, went active duty here for a little while. I know when we were talking the other day, you said you did some training.
Yeah.
That consisted of what kind of training were you doing?
So, yeah, once I came back from overseas, I went on the active side, because before that I'd just been on what's called the end day side of the guard. So I was at part-time, 1 week in a month. We trained for a few weeks a year, which for me was only like a year and a half before we got deployed. Once I came home and went on the active side, the beginning of that was just as a training NCO. So I had a unit that I handled all of the, day-to-day tasks, if you will, for a end day unit. So my guys were all people that were coming into the training pipeline, that were getting ready to go to basic, getting ready to go do their AIT, their job training, and then we would send them out to an operational unit. And so they would come to me for anywhere from 3 months to 18 months, 2 years maybe.
Oh, wow.
To finish that pipeline, because we're sending them off to training. They go to Fort Benning, they come back, we get them out processed, they go, or wherever they went to training. So I handled, everything, all of the training, all of the pay, the meals, the lodging, coordinating personnel, buildings, all of that day-to-day stuff. That was on me. So that when they came in for their monthly training period, all of that was ready to rock and roll. I had 5 or 6 cadre that worked with me that, we would put together that whole weekend. And it's like from, 06 on Saturday morning until Sunday evening, we're just putting them through it, making sure they're prepared so that when they get to their training site, they've got the best possible chance at succeeding, and whoever, whatever think tank in the Army decided that was, that the best chance of success was being kind of in that environment first before you actually get there, makes a big difference. And I think it did. So
that's cool.
That was the first several years.
I remember when It was the only time, I mean, that I saw it. It's what we call the receiving platoon.
Yeah.
It was like your indoctrination.
Yeah.
And basically you were, and that was in boot camp, and that was it. And you were in that thing for maybe 4 days.
Yeah.
And basically all they did was take you around, give you uniforms, give you a bunch of shots.
Yeah.
Hopefully they didn't kill you. Then they.
You know what I mean?
No,
it's been a weird or kind of a wild transition.
Mm-hmm.
But now coming to a place where it's like, oh, it's a project for Debbie's. The problem and my mission at hand is we all think, well, as long as I'm checking all these boxes, I'm a good dad.
Oh, dude.
I'm a good husband. I'm a good leader, right? And the reality is like, dude, if you got really deep down and realized who you are, you would know
there's more.
There's a lot of deadbeat in you.
There's a lot more. Well, I mean,
and it's getting that out.
We crave comfort, right?
Absolutely.
And
our bodies are wired for it.
I mean, God created us that way, right? Like but comfort in real life is living in Eden.
Yeah.
Right? Which means complete and total dependence and trust and faith in our Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
Like I'm longing for Eden 2.0, and that's when He comes home, and that's when we walk with Him in the cool of the night. Like I'm like, come on, let's go. Like,
yeah.
I want to see my kids get old. But I'm also positive that my kids are going to be there with me.
Absolutely.
So if you want to come, you can come now. Let's walk. I'll walk with you and my kids. But so you get to this place that is comfort. Like when I heard you talk about, you hit pause, and this is just my take on this. So if I'm going down a wrong rabbit hole here, please correct me. But I think that a lot of people may hear pause like, hey, I just stopped doing it. And that's not true. I think a lot of times it's not that you stop doing it. It's that all you do is the easy and comfortable. It's easy to get up and go to my job every day.
Absolutely.
Right? Of course it is. It's what I've done. It's what I've done for 15 years. I'm really good at it. Yeah. I can get up. It doesn't take any brain cells for me to do that. I can get up. I can freaking just, throw it in, whatever it's called. Just it's easy to do that. And you get comfortable. And as men, we are not wired for that. Like that longing, that voice in the back of your head that's telling you, hey, what is it? I wrote up there. If you argue with your if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them.
Yeah.
Like, and it's that voice in the back of your head going, oh man, that guy's, you're not going to be like that guy. Whatever. That's really just the voice telling you that so that you don't become that guy.
Yeah.
Because that voice knows that if you step into being that man, then becoming that guy and becoming that husband and becoming that father, all of a sudden he didn't have power. Whatever you want to believe that voice is, right? I was listening to a podcast a couple days ago, and it was Craig Rochelle with Stephen Furtick. And he literally was talking about that exact same thing. It was just how we all know that there's this greater good thing that we want to do, right? Now, I personally believe, and I know you believe, that that's something that God put inside of us. Whether you believe in God or not, I know for a fact that we all believe that there's this greater thing that we're supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's this thing on the outside of us that's telling us that we can't, what is that from? And where is that coming from? Whatever that is, I personally believe it's Satan.
Yeah.
It's that's the voice. And so whatever that nagging voice inside of your head telling you that, hey, you can't quit drinking, or hey, it's okay. Like, I'm not going to tell you it's not okay to have a beer, right? I'm not going to say that. I am going to say that you need to be able to recognize when it is a problem.
Yeah.
And when it's holding you back from becoming who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, I'll have a beer or a glass of wine every once in a while, but I'm like that close to not even doing that anymore, just because.
Sure.
So I really don't even know why, honestly. Every once in a while I'll get an occasion, I'll be like, the glass of wine does sound good.
Yeah.
And then I'll get it and I'll be like,
yeah,
damn, now I gotta drink it because I haven't poured.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'll nurse on it for like an hour and a half, but I don't need it.
Yeah.
And it affects my ability to get up in the morning. It affects my ability to have a clear head. It affects my ability to have a good workout. It affects my ability to do work. It affects my sleep
First thing that goes is your sleep.
Like, and so ultimately,
Yeah.
There's nothing good from it.
But here's the thing.
But there's nothing against. I'm not gonna tell anybody you don't drink. Like if you don't want, that's your decision.
He will not tell you that. I will.
He will.
But here's the thing though. Here's the craziest thing. Is
I'm just telling you, you don't need it. Like there's so much more.
There's a lot to unpack though. One, like you said, all the things start going downhill, right? Sleep is the first thing that we know. Man, alcohol within a few hours of sleep is a terrible cocktail for ruining the whole next day.
I actually listened to a doctor. Hold on,
Go ahead. Yeah.
I listened to a doctor say this the other day. This is no, and it's, I'm not telling people to drink in the afternoon, but literally that's what he said. He said, if you are just like, hey, I want to have a drink, he's like, then do it at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So by the time you go to bed, it's out of your system so you can go to sleep.
Here's what's funny.
Which means stop at like 5.
Yeah, here's what's funny about that. I had transitioned to so much of an afternoon drinker because in the beginning I said, I don't want to mess up my sleep. So I'm going to be done drinking by 7.
Oh yeah, that's not going to work.
Right? What would happen is, I work for myself. I'm at the shop or I'm in the garage. I'm doing whatever. It's 2:00. To me, I'm like, hey, it's afternoon. It's all good.
Beer.
After dinner, I'm going to be done. Right? And so even the idea of like, hey, yeah, technically it's been studied. Alcohol within a few hours of sleep will disrupt your deal. Well, if your flesh is weak enough to say, hey, I still want to have some beers, I'm just going to move it earlier.
Oh yeah, man.
All the bad things go. But I digress. First thing that goes is your sleep. The downward spiral starts there. There's no denying that. But what I will say about alcohol in general is it's one of the very few things that we all recognize, for being honest, and scientifically, medically, it's recognized as poison. But people will cling to the idea that they don't need it, right? I don't need alcohol. I can control it. But if I'm at the beach, I'm going to have a margarita. If I'm watching the game, I'm going to crack a couple tall boys. If I'm on date night, I'm going to have this. And you start to realize, like, this thing that nobody needs, they can't get away from it. From all of these social settings that they've built into their pattern, right?
It's just excuses
and
to justify.
I'm the
That's
guy.
all it is, man.
I'm the guy on the other side of it now, going, no. It's not that I can't just have one. I don't want one, right? To where now I'm looking at the guy that I was 5 years ago. Before I started drinking every day, I was just the guy that drank on the weekends, at the golf course, at the lake, at the pool, whatever those activities were, which is statistically a ton of people. The devil would have you think that all your problems are just you.
Yeah.
We know that's not true. We know statistically it's not true. We just know if you're being real and you know how the world works, it's not true. So a lot of my message is not to the guy that's drinking every single day. You know you got a problem. You know we've got work to do.
Dude, I mean, you sit there, you talk about you drink at every social occasion you have, you got a problem.
Yeah, but it's and here's the craziest thing. It's socially acceptable.
Oh, 100%, man.
There's a lot of debate. I've actually seen a lot of...
I don't know, maybe we should start going around and blaze up, right?
Yeah, so here's the thing.
Just kidding. Don't do that either.
Yeah. When you talk about socially acceptable sin, man, in 2024, it's hard to determine which one is the most socially acceptable, right? And the reality is, and we know as leaders, it's all bad. Like, yes, I know plenty of people that may have a couple of drinks a year. I'm not talking to them. They know I'm not talking to them, right? Got it. But for most people, it's just a part of everyday life, or it's normal, right? Yeah. And what we normalize, and that's the thing. I'm not so much worried about this guy that only has it on the weekend or only has it this, whatever. It's normalized. So now the people that he's bringing up, his children, go, oh, when we go to the lake, we drink alcohol.
Yeah.
When we go to dinner with our friends, we have to get a ride home, right? And we start to normalize these things, and then our kids, it's just 10 times easier. And it's the same way on the opposite side. Hey, we go to church.
Yeah.
We wake up in the morning, on Sunday morning, we go to church, we worship, we fellowship, we do these things. This is what we do, right? Hey, we exercise our bodies, and we watch what we not we watch what we eat like we diet. No, we intentionally feed our bodies, because this is what we do. And kids go, oh, we don't eat this crap every single day. Whatever. What we normalize, especially as the leaders of our families, our children, they will take that and run with it, right? And so that's a huge piece of it for me, is not even necessarily to the person that isn't some kind of daily junk. It's me 5 years ago, before I became that person, where I was the guy that's just like, dude, it's not a problem. It's a fun
drink every day.
It's social.
I only drink at social events.
Right. And so my thought
social
process,
every day.
if I can grab that person before, because dude, either way you're walking a slippery slope, right? And it would be crazy to think that only people that are, it'd be crazy to think that the only people that need help are the ones that are like homeless, living in the street, doing everything they can to get a fifth.
My wife is baking now.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, sorry.
And
it's cookies and banana bread. I'm like,
but it's like, I know that I can't reach those people.
Yeah.
Right? But there's 15 million Americans that self-report. Okay. So think about that. There's really no benefit to reporting you have a drinking problem if you don't. 15 million Americans 2 years ago self-report that they have a drinking problem. 10% of them are addressing it. So what does that tell you? That means a lot of households are being run and led by people that may have a drinking problem and are not addressing it. It's time to address it. The same way it is if you're in the fitness space or the spiritual world, whatever it is, whatever your thing is. I just know how damaging this habit is for men, and dude, we're gonna do something about it.
I've got friends who have been addicts and are now on the other side of that, and it's been amazing to watch the change in their families. One of my closest friends is a former Marine, and he's walked that. He came back and he had multiple deployments, very, very kinetic deployments.
Yeah.
Came back dealing with all that, and alcohol was his thing.
Yeah.
But he's honestly, he is a very close friend of mine. And one of these days I'm gonna get him on here and let him kind of talk about his story, because he's awesome. Now he's like full-time dad to two awesome boys. Lives here. He's not even moved here from California. I met him in church because he had a Marine Corps tattoo on his arm.
Yeah. So you know what's wild about that is, and there's tons of people, like great dudes like that, and it's like, I guess it's one of those things where most people would never ever go this route because it's not their place. But when you know what that world is, right? So many people gave me a pass because they just assumed, like, man, coming out of the military and whatever that world must have been like, this is how he copes, right? And what I needed was somebody ahead of me to go, hey, brother, this ain't how you do it.
No.
But we're so afraid. We're so afraid to tell other people, other men especially, hey man, the life you're living right now sucks.
Yeah.
And you're so much better, but I'm telling you, I'm gonna hold you accountable. You're acting like kind of like a trash bag right now, and you need to stop. I feel like I spent 2 years like hoping that somebody ahead of me was gonna come to me and be like, hey dude, you can only sustain this.
You never joined my small group. That's what happened. You joined my small group. I kicked your ass for 2 years.
Invitation got lost in the mail. But that's reality. And the only way that we fix that problem is by creating platforms where maybe I would have been comfortable enough to go, oh, I see that, I like that, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Maybe nobody's going to go to those people specifically, but we can build things that men want to be a part of, because they know they need something. So that's what this is all about.
That's cool. What do you see the long-term vision of this? I mean, I know that obviously your story and your struggle with the use of alcohol and the impact that it had on your life, and then your ability to just kind of look back and go, hey, wow, like I don't have I don't want to say physical addiction, because I know that, because I don't want people to think that I don't realize that there is definitely a physical side of this. Like, I mean, because there can be, but there's also people out there who just, they drink on a regular basis and they don't realize the influence that they have or they're giving up. When they drink. So that would be the key. We're not saying that alcohol, we're not saying that it's horrible and wrong and you shouldn't do it. I mean, you are.
Sure. No, it's okay.
But you all said, like, hey, I'm not talking to the person who's having like 1 or 2 drinks a year, but the person that's drinking on a regular basis at all these social occasions, is they're just continuing to find justification for them to have a drink. So is it a problem for them or is it not? And really the question I see is hey man, what influence are you giving up every time you decide to have a drink, right? And so that's the biggest thing. Like, I mean, so we all have lines where we're willing to give up our influence, you know, and that may be, hey, I blew up at my boss. Well, you just lost all your influence that you had.
Yeah.
You know, and alcohol can be one of those things.
So you know as well as I do, somebody who has led tons and tons of groups. And I talked about this a couple episodes ago on a podcast. How many people, and I say men, women, all across the board, this is all available to everybody, okay? I don't know how to tell you to be a better woman, right? And I don't necessarily know that I can tell you how to be a better man, but I can tell you some things that have helped me. But this is available to everybody. How many people would have led a group this semester if they weren't so worried that the person they are on the weekends makes them look like a hypocrite?
100%, man.
And they're not ready to dive into cutting that part of their life out. And they're also not ready to start that position of leadership, because they know that the first lens they're going to be looked at is, I just saw you in your Instagram stories on a cruise, drinking every day, and now you want to do this? What does it mean? You know, now,
well, I mean,
that's
not living in this sin mentality.
Yeah,
like
but that's not,
which is
and that's not me saying that you have to be perfect before you start.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, it's a problem enough that it's keeping you from doing what you know is your next step.
Yes.
Dude, it's not a problem for anybody else. It's a problem for you.
Yep.
And you are now laying down that leadership.
Yep.
Right. The other thing that you were talking about.
all leadership is influence, man.
Yeah, it's influence.
No matter what it is.
Yeah, you're laying down that influence. But the other thing that you were saying too about the physical addiction, and then obviously I believe there's a ton of identity work that can be done, should be done, because obviously the physical is the physical. But here's a fun fact for you, and this is well studied. I can't cite you a study.
No, that's okay.
Excited
about the way I cite the Bible.
When you're 4 days sober, you are as sober as you're ever going to be. 4 days. And I believe that if the people that wanted to get sober forever, if they knew physically, dude, after 4 days, physically, you're as sober as you're ever going to be.
Yeah, but now it's more the mental.
That's why.
The mental capacity.
That's why you
not
can't.
Their mental capacity.
You can't just do the physical. You can't just white knuckle it.
Yeah.
You got to change a lot about who you believe you are, about why you do the things that you do, what you're meant to do. All these things. That it's two pieces of it. But there's a lot of hope, I think, in the fact that once you're 4 days in, dude, you're the guy now. Like, you are sober. And you're just as sober as you're ever going to be. So now, focus on the work that keeps you there. Because I believe you can get sober all you want, but if you don't create a life worth staying sober for, dude, nothing is ever going to look as good as whatever your vice is.
Dude,
you know what I mean?
I unpack with you know, I have a coaching consulting company, and one of the first things we do is, and I really hate using the word purpose, but that's really the first thing we do is we help men, or I do on my side, is I help men unpack who they are. because when you're able to kind of define who that is, like who God created you to be, what are the things that you've walked through, what are the things that come naturally to you. Like there's certain gifts and traits and things that you have that no one else in the world has. Only Brian Carter has those things, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's experienced things the way Brian has, which has created the memories and the things that you need to be you, to become the man that you are called to be. I always go back to 2 Timothy 3:17 where it says, so that the men of God can be complete and fully equipped. And I heard God one morning, this was in 2020. I wrote this in March. If I pull one of my journals, I probably will find it, where it says, I felt like he asked me, what is a fully complete, or a complete, fully equipped man of God? And I'm like, really? Like, you're supposed to give me that answer?
Yeah.
You're not supposed to ask me.
No, go find out.
But what I did eventually kind of come to was my life is a process of becoming that.
Yeah.
So all my experiences and everything that I'm going to walk through, the good, the bad, the ugly, the everything, right, is going to one day result in me being that. And that day is when I believe, and I just kind of a weird belief, and I don't know if it's right or wrong, I don't really care, is when I get to go home.
Yeah.
My real home, right? Because now I'm ready. But in the process, I get to continue using that and honing that and getting that better and identifying that. And so because I'm able to process who I am, I can now build a strategy around what I need to do next based on that. Same as you, like, hey, I've identified I've done the hard work of identifying who I am. Now, does that continue to evolve? Like Brian Carter's going to continue to evolve over the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, 30 years. I mean, when you're Grandpa Carter, you know, long time from now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you got little ones.
I can't wait.
I know.
You know?
But anyway.
Yeah. You know, and the last thing I said on that, you asked what's the long-term vision. I don't know in a matter of years what that looks like, because I don't know how long it'll take. But I kind of just set this this original target, this original milestone of thinking, dude, I want to help 1,000 men go through their first 100 days of sobriety.
Cool.
And I know that on whatever timeline that is, whatever that creates, then we'll figure out that part, right? But the reality is, man, there is no way to measure the exponential impact of 1,000 men going back into their families, leading them well without being tied to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the coolest thing ever, right? What does that do in the church? What does that do politically? Like in all these areas. And then those 1,000 men hit that pause button again, unpause, and go do whatever that looks like for them.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's kind of the first thing. That's the long-term vision. However long that, I hope it's like 72 days, right?
Yeah,
but
when do you want to hit 1,000?
But you know, but that's the thing is, I'm like, hey, and not only that is the reps that come with that is, hey, by $999, I have a pretty good idea of what happens when we hit 1,000. You know what I mean? But that's going to be the coolest thing ever.
That's awesome, man. I love that vision. 1,000 men.
1,000 men, 100 days. So you get 100 days. Think about 100 days of anything. But like I said, it's not about I'm going to be sober for 100 days.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that if you have somebody to walk through it with, that everything changes, right?
So now I'm not saying you can't do 1,000 men in 6 months, but like
2 to 5.
the rest of the year. What's your goal for the rest of the year? What do you want to see happen for the rest of the year?
So my biggest thing right now, obviously on the podcast side of things, I'm in a race to 100 episodes. That's selfishly for me.
You got 100 days, man. You're putting one out almost every day. So.
Yeah, June. I'm hoping that, I think it's June 16th. I'm hoping is going to be number 100. So I'm in a race, like I said, for myself for 100 episodes because
That'd be cool if it was Father's Day.
It would be cool. I know that the longer it takes me to do 100 episodes, the longer it takes me to improve those things that I can improve on my messaging on how I operate and how I do those things so that I can reach enough people to get me 1,000 people that are going to change their lives through sobriety. So I'm in a race to 100 because I also know too, dude, if you go through 100 episodes, you're not going to quit, right? We know statistically, if you get to 21, dude, you're in the top 1%. Top 1%.
This is 22.
Yeah.
So 20, I think this is episode 22 right here.
You are now.
So I'm like, woo!
Yeah, number 21 puts you in the top 1%. I have to imagine, I don't know the statistics beyond that. If you make it to 100, you're not stopping. And when I said, hey, this is what I'm going to do, like I'm going to pour everything I got into it, I can't stop. Mm-hmm. The only way to guarantee that is to literally put out way more content than anybody's expecting. I'm not saying that anybody needs, but the coolest thing is, if I look at the analytics, the number of listeners per episode goes up every time I put out an episode. So my thought process is, if that's going to happen, and it may not happen forever, but if that's going to happen, why not get out 100 episodes as fast as I can?
Yeah.
One a day, I think is cool. One every other day. Why would I wait? If I'm not talking just to talk, I want it to be intentional, then why would I delay, right? It may not always be the case. I don't think I'm always going to do one a day or whatever. But that's my short-term play, is so that becomes the top, value add, if you will, in marketing terms, for it to reach enough people that those 1,000 men can find me, I can find them, and then ultimately is to bring them into community, because I think one of the biggest things holding most men back is they have nobody that they're willing to trust, that they're willing to go to and say, hey, I need some help doing this, whatever it is, whatever that looks like. I want to create that place that they can come, get those resources, go through those first 100 days. And if they want to stick around after that and help others, awesome. If not, dude, you just changed your life. Go, it's like, go be the church.
Yeah.
Go be the guy, right? Go do the things.
So good.
So that's where we're going, man.
Cool. Well, man, how can people find you, support you? What are you looking for, man?
Hey, the biggest thing right now is on Apple or Spotify, the Deadbeat Dad Project.
Okay.
You can find the podcast on Instagram at Deadbeat Dad Project, on YouTube at Deadbeat Dad Project. Those are the easiest things, but the podcast is a really big thing. Once you check it out, rate it, review it, share it with somebody. I'm still trying to kind of figure out how all of that works, but man, it's the coolest thing. We've got listeners in so many states already, 2 countries. Super proud of that. God be the glory for every bit of that.
It's awesome.
I
have to get you to help me with some of that algorithm stuff on my podcast, because
I'm trying to get this.
My numbers aren't quite there, but that's awesome. I love that, man.
Yeah, dude, I'm trying to get that message to as many people. So that's the biggest thing. Find the podcast and let's rock and roll.
Awesome, man. Well, is there a website? Quick question.
No, we're just taking the podcast.
All right, cool.
For now. So
right on. All right.
More to come. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. I'm trying to think, what are the questions? You got anything you want to leave everybody with?
Man, I'll tell you this. Super quick story, and there's a lot of different interpretations of how this all went down. We've talked about it in church recently, and it's well documented, but there's 2 Moravian missionaries. These are young guys. They hear about this desert island that it's basically one slave owner. He owns this thing, and he wants nothing to do with Christianity. And these 2 guys sell themselves into slavery, which at that time could have been a lifelong thing. Like, this is not you're coming back. Now, they eventually did make it back, at least one of them. But they said, hey, we're going to give up our whole life to do this work. And as they're being seen off by their families, the last recorded words of one of these 2 young men was that the lamb that was slain, receive in me the reward of his suffering. And I look at that story and I think, man, if that's what they were willing to give their lives for, to go be missionaries in the mission field and do that, man, the work that we get to do on stuff like this is not work. This is not persecution. This is a blessing.
Yeah.
And man, if I can get to the point where I can literally build my life around doing this work. It is the greatest joy of my life. It's all I could ever hope for, that it would bring good to other people in that way. And I appreciate you so much for having me on here, man. This is what helps move that. And anyways, if you haven't heard that story, it's the coolest thing ever.
I haven't, man. I'll have to give you a better on that on the when we get offline. Man, well, I can't thank you enough for being here. Brian, I think it's crazy how it's taken us long enough to actually finally connect. I mean, I know that we're at church together, at one church, and then we've connected again at another church, and we've kind of run into each other. And I really feel that God's kind of bringing us back together at a certain point of what's going on. I mean, I remember seeing you pop up on my Instagram feed and hitting it and going, okay, I gotta check this out and see what's going on. And you know my heart for men and for them stepping up and becoming the leaders that they're called to be. And my whole coaching business is based around that. And so anything we can do to help you, come alongside you, man, I would love to support that. And we're here. And obviously I will send this. I mean, I have listeners. I've got some guys that are very particular, that are loyal and good friends that would align very fastly with what you're saying and what you're doing. So
right on, man.
Thanks again for being here, and I appreciate you for just what you're doing and the difference you're making in these men's lives, man.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
All right. And with that, hey guys, Brian has left the building. Thank you again for turning into the Trailblazers podcast, and I hope that you enjoyed today's podcast. If you did, please spend some time to make sure you like and share. You can find it on all the different places: Apple, Spotify, Anchor, I don't know, all kinds of places. I don't even know where they all go anymore. Anyway, this is William, and I'm out.